What if NFL free agency was actually a draft? Welcome to your 2024 NFL free agency draft, where I select one NFL free agent to your favorite team. From number 1 to number 32, I go through each NFL team's biggest needs and select one free agent that I think is a perfect fit. I'm playing GM. This is no prediction. And I'm giving you a free agent for your favorite team. I saw this idea on CBS and I said, I got to do this on the channel. This is beautiful. I love it. So this is your NFL free agency mock draft. Gronk, spike the like button. Let me know in the comment section below if you agree with my selection for your favorite team. And you're probably wondering, Mitch, how do you get the draft order? How does that work? I'm going by cap space. So the number 1 team has the most cap space in the NFL, and the number 32 team has the least amount of cap space in the NFL, making it realistic to how NFL free agency actually works. More money, easier to spend, easier to sign. Less money, can't really sign anybody. So, let's kick it off with the number 1 team. That is the New England Patriots. With over $100 million to spend, the Patriots must look at the quarterback market and decide, do they want to go with Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, or do they want to sign a big position of need on offense? Offensive tackle, wide receiver. Because they have the 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft, they're likely going to get a quarterback at that spot. I wouldn't be against picking up Kirk Cousins or even Baker here. But personally, because they want to look towards the future and are not in direct contention in 2024, the best way to go about this is getting a young playmaker to help your quarterback. So with the number 1 pick in the NFL free agency draft, the Patriots will select Michael Pittman Jr. Michael Pittman Jr., I'm a big fan of. I think he's honestly underrated. He can play in the slot, outside. He's physical. He's a great possession receiver with reliable hands. He's always active and on the field. He can win contested catches regularly. He runs really crisp routes for a big guy of his size. He's not the most explosive. He's not going to wow you on a highlight reel, but he catches about 90 to 100 balls every single season. And the Patriots need a reliable number 1. And they just need receivers, period. They need playmakers. So Michael Pittman Jr. will help solve that big need for the Patriots with the 1st pick. Plus, he's pretty young as well, which also helps. With the 2nd pick in the NFL free agency draft, the Washington Commanders are on the clock. The Commanders could use a pass rusher. They do figure they're going to pick a quarterback at number 2, so that's not the direction they're looking. Plus, they still have Sam Howell on the roster, so it's not really worth it to go after a veteran. The offensive line could definitely use some work as well, but thinking that Dan Quinn is now the head coach of this team, he needs a pass rusher on the edge to get to the quarterback to help his scheme succeed. He had Micah Parsons, he had DeMarcus Lawrence, Dorrance Armstrong in Dallas. He needs a big-time baller on the edge. And to me, that guy, the best one available is Josh Allen. Josh Allen is drafted by the Washington Commanders after an absolutely unbelievable campaign in 2023. Near the league lead in sacks last year, Allen can do it all. He can be versatile in this scheme. Rushing on the edge, using his finesse, quickness, speed, and bend to get to the quarterback, dropping back in coverage occasionally, and being a steady edge setter in this defense. Josh Allen is a hybrid edge piece that can be a long-term solution that helps you get to the quarterback every single game. The other thing I like about Josh Allen, he's never really played with others around him that are fantastic. Jacksonville has never really had great support around him on the defensive front, and I think that makes him a transferable piece to a team that, with Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, can really help him get to the quarterback even more. So the Commanders utilize their first pick on a pass rusher. The third pick in the 2024 NFL free agency draft, the Chicago Bears hold that selection. And thinking about who their coach is, it's also a defensive coach. So we've got 3 defensive coaches in a row. Patriots go receiver. Commanders go edge rusher. Bears are thinking defensive line as well. They have holes in the interior. They have holes on the edge. They could really go either way. And their pick will be Brian Burns of the Carolina Panthers is selected to the Chicago Bears. Many feel that Brian Burns is the best edge rusher in free agency this offseason. I wouldn't really argue with that. Him and Allen are very close for me. Burns is a pure pass rushing specialist with great bend and great length. He's really had a bit of a down year in 2022, but he could ascend on a defensive front now on the opposite side of Montez Sweat. He's still incredibly young, and he's going to consistently produce year after year after year, even in a way that maybe you could argue Josh Allen has not done in the NFL in comparison to Brian Burns. So Burns is an elite edge rusher that's very young, that will team up with Sweat on the opposite side of Matt Eberflus's defensive line. The Chicago Bears have a scary defensive front now that they've drafted Burns. I think that's their biggest need in free agency and the easiest to address. With the 4th selection in the 2024 NFL free agency draft, the Tennessee Titans could obviously use an upgrade to the offensive line. They could use an upgrade to the receiving core. They could use an upgrade to a lot of positions, honestly. But defensively, they could also use an upgrade. Despite bringing in an offensive coach, the best free agents happen to be on defense. So looking at that side of the ball and determining who's the best available, who's the guy that could really help us the most. And Tennessee has really struggled in the secondary, which is why with the 4th overall pick, the Tennessee Titans select the best corner on the market. That is Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson really impressed me last year. His tape is undeniable. He's great in zone, but last year I felt like he became more of a feisty man corner. His presence in terms of keeping his eyes on the quarterback and reading the quarterback is exquisite. And his ability to get rough and physical with receivers was definitely evident. So I love Jalen Johnson. I think he's a number 1 corner. I think he's top 5 to 10 in the NFL. I think he can play in any system. And I think the Tennessee Titans desperately need a number 1 corner, especially playing against CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence in that division, and potentially Anthony Richardson. The Tennessee Titans are going to need to make sure that secondary is on point. So the Titans select Jalen Johnson. With the 5th selection in the 2024 NFL free agency draft, the Indianapolis Colts could use some secondary pieces, but now that Jalen Johnson is gone, L'Jarius Sneed is not on the market, I'm not sure there's a guy there for them. Defensive line could definitely be a need for them. Wide receiver, losing Michael Pittman is a big need for them. What direction will they go? Obviously, they have a young quarterback, so keeping that in mind, how can they help this team? The Indianapolis Colts will go with a young defender to replace Grover Stewart in the middle of their defense. Gus Bradley loves pass rushers. Justin Matabike, however you say his Buki name, I believe that Matabike will be a great one for Gus Bradley. And he's just a complete football player. I think his low center of gravity, his quickness in his hands is really impressive. I think he's got a great first step off the ball to be able to get to the quarterback. And he really has just gotten better with each and every season in the NFL. You put him beside DeForest Buckner and you've got real issues on the interior of every offensive line that you face. Your edge rushers are solid enough. So this is the best way this team could really improve, is getting an absolute alpha stud in the middle, an ascending superstar, which is what the Colts always look for on the defensive side of the football. That's where they go with this pick. Next up in the NFL free agency draft, the Houston Texans are next. We've got 3 straight AFC South teams, baby. So where will they go after reacting to the Colts and the Tennessee Titans? The Houston Texans, they need defensive line. They need pass rushers. Jonathan Greenard's a free agent. Keep that in mind. Offensively, they don't really need much. The offensive line's intact. The wide receiving core, sure, you could use another upper echelon target, but it's not like you want to go out of your way for it. So what's the big defensive playmaker that could really help this team? And I think people that are following this video so far know exactly where I'm going. That man is Christopher Jones. And some people might be saying, Mitch, why has it taken so long to get to Chris Jones? Why? Well, first of all, you've got the Patriots who don't need defense. You got Washington who has Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen. You've got Chicago, which they definitely could have went with Chris Jones, but I figured they would go with somebody younger because they have a rookie quarterback. The Tennessee Titans needed secondary over pass rush. The Colts, they needed a younger body, right? They're still, again, rookie quarterback from last year in Anthony Richardson. So I figured that the Texans actually make sense for an older defender in Chris Jones, who's around 30. You know, he's got about 2, 3, 4 great years left. So keeping that in mind, the Texans are that team going for the Super Bowl. They're the team in the championship window. And Chris Jones is likely to sign with that type of team. On top of that, the Texans are likely to sign that type of player because it's in their window of pushing CJ Stroud on his rookie contract. So I just think this fit makes the most sense out of all the teams. Jones is a phenomenal player. You do wonder how he might regress with age coming up, but he's been one of the best interior defensive linemen in football for many seasons, dating back to about 2017. And he continues to play at an extremely high level and make big play after big play after big play in big game after big game after big game. And that's exactly what the Texans need. Next up is the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals need defense. I don't care what position you give them other than maybe safety. They need corner. They need edge. They need D-line. They maybe even need linebacker. The Cardinals need everything. And then on top of that, they need wide receiver. So the Arizona Cardinals are going to probably be looking towards the defensive market in free agency just because, you know, they've got the 4th pick in the draft. I believe they have another first-round pick in the draft. They've got 2 of those things. So wide receiver will be available in the first round for them to select. That's not going to be a big deal in this year's class. So defense, defense, defense for Jonathan Gannon. The pick is going to be Danielle Hunter. Now, Danielle Hunter is a little bit older, and you do understand that the Cardinals are not exactly a team in the Super Bowl window, but Hunter could just really help. He's only actually 29. He's not even 30 yet, so he's not super old. But Hunter has just been a super productive pass rusher that could immediately be the alpha pass rusher of this team that desperately needs it. And he's by far the best defender that is available. So you just can't pass this guy up. He's a physical monster. He can play in any system, align in any spot. And on a defense like the Cardinals that needs just about everything, you need players that can pretty much play at any front and any defense in any scheme, because you never know when you might have to switch it or try to play towards other weaker players potentially in certain spots. But Hunter can get to the quarterback, and that's exactly what the Cardinals need. They were 3rd last in sacks last year. Cardinals need pass rushers. Gannon loves pass rushers from the Eagles, and Hunter is going to be his guy. Next, we switch gears to another team that is in the Super Bowl window, and that is the Detroit Lions. The Lions, this one was tough because I had my original draft, I'm not even going to lie, with the Lions selecting Mike Evans. But then I heard earlier today that Mike Evans re-signed with the Bucs. So Lions fans, let me know what you would have thought of that, Mike Evans to the Lions. Now you're going to be disappointed because you're not getting Mike Evans and you're getting a lesser player because there's not many players better than Mike Evans. But I'm not going to go wide receiver now. I thought that Mike Evans, although the receiver position wasn't the most pressing need on the Lions, he was so worth it that they would pick him. Guard is certainly a spot that they could pick because both their starters are free agents. But I figured the Lions wouldn't really prioritize that position as much as they might on defense, where they have huge weaknesses at corner. They have a weakness maybe at the second edge rusher spot and even linebacker to a certain degree. So I thought about what's a good corner that could fix this team or help this team as a number one guy. And to me, a good scheme piece for them would be Kendall Fuller of the Washington Commanders. Kendall Fuller can play really well in zone coverage. He's pretty good in man coverage. I think the Commanders played more man than people realized last year. The Lions like to play a lot of both. And Fuller, what I like about him is he can play inside or outside. And the Lions are one of those teams that they like their little slot, kind of do-it-everything type of nickel corners. And with Fuller, you can kind of put him everywhere. You can put him outside. You can put him inside. You can have him be a design blitzer. He's just a very savvy, smart player with extremely high football IQ. He plays the ball really well. And he was like really good last year. So Fuller might not be what you think of as a lockdown corner, but he's a really reliable number one who's often healthy and going to be there in January for this team to count on when they need a play from one of their defensive backs. So I went with Kendall Fuller a little bit, just from the need standpoint for a contending team. With the 9th selection in the 2024 NFL free agency draft, the Cincinnati Bengals could go a lot of different ways. I considered tackle first, but Tyron Smith is a left tackle, and Orlando Brown doesn't want to play right tackle, and Tyron Smith has never really played right tackle, so I eliminated that. Antoine Winfield Jr. is an incredible safety, and I really did consider that one because Jesse Bates was sorely missed by the secondary last year. But this was one of the worst run-stopping teams in the NFL. DJ Reader is a free agent, and DJ Reader is coming off a major injury. So while this might be a little bit unrealistic, I do think they're going to re-sign DJ Reader. I think there's a player that they could potentially go out and get that might be an upgrade in all facets of the game. I think he's a better pass rusher than DJ Reader. I think he's just as every bit as good of a run defender as DJ Reader. He's been one of the best in the NFL, and that man is Christian Wilkins of the Miami Dolphins, drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. One of the premier defensive linemen in the NFL, is a Cincinnati Bengal, still fairly young, can be just at the forefront of this Bengals defense for years to come. That would really secure their front four, in my opinion. So I like that pickup for the Bengals. It's a player like DJ Reader that when they signed him, I didn't really think he was like a great fit or anything, but I can easily see him replacing that role of Reader in this defense. The next team is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are up next with the number 10 selection in the 2024 NFL free agency draft. And you guys might have noticed, I haven't picked a quarterback yet. Well, the first quarterback in the free agency draft comes off the board right here. And the Raiders, they're running wild. They're jumping for joy. They can't believe that Kirk Cousins has lasted this long in an NFL free agency draft, because now they can pair Kirk Cousins, a productive pro quarterback, with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and a pretty good defense, and be competitive in the AFC West as soon as this year. The Raiders select Kirk Cousins, the man, the myth, the legend of the quarterback series on Netflix, and potentially the comeback player of the year in 2024, throwing the ball to Devontae Adams. Love this fit for them. Think this gives them, a high floor for their team. And even though, some fans might think, oh, we need offensive line, we need defense, Mitch. But Kirk Cousins is there, bro. You need a quarterback, and you don't have a draft pick to really go up and get one. You would need to sell the farm in order to do it. So why not just go out and spend some money and pick up Kirk Cousins? So the Raiders pick up Kirk Cousins next. The Eagles are up next. They need defense. They need speed on defense. They need athleticism on defense. They need a playmaker on defense. Linebacker, safety, maybe corner I thought about. Obviously, they don't need offense unless you're going to go running back, but you're not going to pick a running back here. So the Philadelphia Eagles, I am drafting Antoine Winfield Jr. And the Philadelphia Eagles, much like the Raiders, cannot believe that one of the best, if not the best safety in the NFL is sitting there in the middle at pick 11 of the NFL free agency draft. Antoine Winfield Jr. is a dog. He can blitz. He can tackle. He can cover. He can man, zone. He's really intelligent. Antoine Winfield Jr. would solve a lot of issues for an old defense in the Eagles. So Eagles select one of the best safeties in football, Winfield Jr. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams house is looking to add a new member. And talking about the Rams this offseason, I think people will be deceived by their strategy last offseason to get young and to replenish this roster. I think people are going to forget about the Rams when it comes to signing maybe some veteran names that they love, because the Rams now realize after Puka Nacua and after some of the draft picks they made in 2023 that they're able to go back into the free agency market and dabble a little bit. So their selection, the needs, corner, they could desperately use a number one corner. They could utilize a guard here with Kevin Dotson being a free agent. A safety would be phenomenal for them. But an edge rusher, a pass rusher would also be very nice. So where will the Rams go? I went with Jonathan Greenard here. I would hate to see him leave the Texans because I think they want him back. But if the Rams are able to get a young, productive pass rusher who's been ascending, that's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for a younger guy to fit the timeline of the rest of their roster, and they're looking for someone that can help Matthew Stafford win right away, and that is Jonathan Greenard. They're going to throw big money at him to be a pass rusher for this team and to complement Aaron Donald. So Greenard had a great season last year, had 12-plus sacks. He is going to be what they missed in Leonard Floyd last year, that type of player off the edge, hard worker, grinder, a Sean McVay guy for the Los Angeles Rams. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins cannot be had. He is gone to the Raiders. But the Atlanta Falcons have a spot where they could still select a foe's quarterback, and that is Baker Mayfield. And I think they would be stupid to not pick Baker Mayfield here. They could go edge rusher. They could go wide receiver, bring back Calvin Ridley, baby. But I do think that the way to go is getting a veteran quarterback to help compete in this lousy NFC South. So the Atlanta Falcons are going to select the Bake Man, the commercial maker Baker. And Baker Mayfield is going to wake up. He's going to feel dangerous. He's going to throw dots to Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and he's going to bring a spark to the Atlanta Falcons that they have not seen since Michael Vick. Forget about Matt Ryan. Baker is the next highest selling jersey man in Atlanta. Next up, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers lost Baker Mayfield, but there's no quarterbacks out there unless they want to sign Gardner Minshew. So that, I guess they're going to have to look to the draft. I guess they're going to have to look to Kyle Trask. Pray for them. So where will they go? Guard could be a solution. They could definitely upgrade the offensive line and look to help that young quarterback whichever way they go with that quarterback position. They could look to safety to replace Antoine Winfield. Levante David is a free agent. They've got a lot of guys that they might lose in this NFL free agency draft, unfortunately for the Bucs. But unfortunately for them, I've seen their team play more than most in the last few years, and I really like their players. But the Bucs are going to go with Frankie Louvu, which is a pick that I don't think a lot of people would see coming. But I like this pick because Levante David's getting old, and he's only going to be there for so long. Devin White is also a free agent, and Todd Bowles loves his linebackers in the middle of his defense, linebackers that are hybrid, linebackers that can do it all. Frankie Louvu was once upon a time an edge rusher who moved to the inside, converted to be a very good cover man, a great tackler, and a heck of a blitzer. He put up about 6 sacks last year. And this is a guy that could really complement Todd Bowles' blitzing scheme, whether it's in coverage in the middle of the field or by blitzing himself and rushing the quarterback. I think this is a perfect schematical fit for Frankie Louvu, and it helps fill a need long-term for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on their defense. So they miss out on their quarterbacks, but they get Frankie Louvu. Next up, speaking of Frankie Louvu, the Carolina Panthers, who are absolutely irate that they just lost Frankie Louvu. So they're thinking about how can we steal a free agent from a team that yeah, you know, maybe used to play in this division, this guy. Maybe he used to be a first-round pick. Maybe they traded him because he had a little bit of a hint of addiction, or maybe just a problem with the gambling. You know where I'm going with this one? The Carolina Panthers, they need a wide receiver. They need a go-to guy for Bryce Young. And there's only one, and I mean one, that could be a number one for the future. And that man is Calvin Ridley. Ridley can align outside the numbers, complementing Adam Thielen in this offense, who lines up mostly in the slot. He can run exquisite, detailed routes. And hey, he also comes from Alabama, the same place that Bryce Young once called home. So Calvin Ridley, the right route running extraordinaire, is now a Carolina Panther. From the Panthers, we go to the Vikings. We move. The Vikings need a quarterback because Kirk Cousins, see you later. The edge position is in dire need of somebody as Danielle Hunter has left. The guard position, Dalton Risner is a free agent. But the Vikings are open because they realize without Kirk Cousins, well, we're not going to win anything this year. So we've got to think about this. We've got to make our defense better. How do we do that? Well, what does Brian Flores love in a defense? He loves big mother you-know-whats in the middle of his defense that can rush the quarterback, that can stop the run, that can be ballers. And this guy probably should have gone earlier. His name is Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams is a perfect fit for Brian Flores' defense. He's played in a defense similar under Patrick Graham in New York. He thrived in that defense. He could go to Minnesota and thrive in that defense, aligning all over the defensive line, playing in any front you want. D-tackle, you know, he's really, really good all around. And yeah, he's aging maybe a tad, but the Vikings, they could be aggressive in the draft, trade up for a quarterback, and their defense could hold it all together if Leonard Williams comes in and complements that front that they already possess. So the Vikings draft Leonard Williams with their selection. Next up, we've got Leonard Williams' former team, the New York Giants. Apparently, they hate Daniel Jones now. I didn't know that. But they're going to have to pay the man. So quarterback is not a place I'm going to go here. They do need to complement the quarterback with wide receivers. But there isn't really a great wide receiver name at this point in the draft. The offensive line has been a problem for many years. I thought about the edge position, but there's not really a guy that really stands out to me at this point in the draft. So the ultimate determining factor, I'm going with somebody that I think might be the best at his position in free agency. I think that he's going to help support a young quarterback of the future and block for that man. And I went with the pick that I predicted. I'm going with Michael Onwenu to the New York Giants. I like this pick. I like this fit. I guess it shows here. I think he's going to help the running game. I think he's going to help protect Daniel Jones and the future of the franchise at quarterback, whoever that may be. I think that he could play right tackle or right guard. I think he'll provide many solutions on the offensive line for a team that has not had many solutions in recent history. So the Giants go with a big-time guard in Michael Onwenu. Next up, the Jacksonville Jags. The Jags need offensive line. And I thought about edge because Josh Allen's gone, but otherwise I didn't really think of many other positions. I do think they need a nickel corner, but I'm not going to go out of my way for that. I did think that a wide receiver could be possible with Calvin Ridley departing, but center, offensive line, guard, you need to be able to protect Trevor Lawrence. He's the future of your franchise. He's the franchise, man. So I went with the best center in free agency, and that is Connor Williams, a guy that I think can protect Trevor Lawrence, keep the integrity of the middle of the pocket, allow Lawrence to manipulate the pocket a bit better, step up into his throws, and it felt like he was uncomfortable for much of the season last year. So I went with the best center on the market, and that man is Connor Williams. Jacksonville gets a center. The Jets are also in need of some offensive line protection for their old man quarterback who might play more than 3 plays this year, Aaron Rodgers. They're looking for blindside protection so that his knees and his Achilles don't buckle in 2024. I did think about a wide receiver here because I think they need a number 2. But again, I thought the options on the offensive line were better as an alternative. Safety could have been an option on defense, but they really don't need defense. Offense is the way to go for the Jets. Offense, left tackle, wide receiver. Those are their biggest needs. So I went with Tyron Smith. This is an easy plug and play. Tyron Smith is still one of the best left tackles in the NFL, but he's old as dirt. So only a team that is competing for a championship or thinks they're competing for a championship would go out of their way to select Tyron Smith in the top 20 of the free agency draft, as good as he is. And I think the Jets are that team because they only have Aaron Rodgers for so long. Tyron Smith can team up with him for the remainder of his career right there in New York. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay Packers are next up, and they have slightly less cap space. The Packers need a safety desperately. They could use a nickel corner or a corner in general. Those are the two positions I mostly juggled. I thought about defensive line, but I don't think they're half bad on those spots. So safety is really the area I felt like they could improve the most and help their defensive coach, their new defensive coach, the most by providing maybe a hint of versatility. So the Packers are going to go with Kyle Duggar. I had them picking up Xavier McKinney in free agency as a prediction. I had Duggar going back to New England. But to switch it up a little bit, I'm going with Duggar to the Packers because I think what he will bring is a lot. He's physical, which is something the Packers defense has often been criticized for not being. Kyle Duggar is physical. He's downhill. He'll hit you. He's a great tackler. He's a great athlete. He could play in a lot of different roles. He can play near the line of scrimmage or he could play free safety. And Duggar, I think, is just hitting his prime right now. I think he would be an absolute dog for the Packers and Jordan Love in the coming years. So I love that pickup for the Packers. They needed to upgrade the safety. They get a guy that can play all the safety spots. The Baltimore Ravens are next up. The Baltimore Ravens don't have a lot of cap space, but they do need a lot of things. Edge, Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy are free agents. They could utilize a linebacker. Patrick Queen is out there. They could utilize defensive line because Justin Madubuike just left, although I think their depth is solid enough. I think their secondary is in good shape. I think their wide receiving core is mostly fine, although they could use another good one. The running backs are in shambles. They need a running back big time. They need guards. Both starters are in free agency. So this one was tricky, but I ended up going with a guy that I think can really help them on offense, and that's Robert Hunt, who to me is probably the best available offensive player. He's a great guard, and he's great in run blocking. He's great in pass blocking. He did a lot of both in Miami, and he can set the tone. He's got some physicality. He's got some edge that just fits a Baltimore Raven. He gives me Baltimore Ravens vibes, and they could be looking to upgrade the athleticism of their guard position, moving on from Kevin Zeitler, an old man. So Ravens going with an underrated, perhaps, name in Robert Hunt to help protect Lamar and open up holes for whichever running back they give that football to. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks need offensive line. Center and both guards are in need. They don't really need anything else on offense, considering that they're staying with Geno. Defensively, they could use defensive line. Unfortunately, Mike McDonald's boy is already gone. Linebacker, Patrick Queen, a lot of people would put here, but I'm going to go with something a little bit different. Safety, they're good. Corner, they're mostly fine. So for Seattle, I thought about this one. I ended up going with offensive line, and I went with Kevin Dotson. He played really well for the Rams last year. He was, I think, like top 7, according to PFF last year at the guard position. And he just recently broke out. He's still fairly young, so you're not too worried about his age. To complement the rest of the young offensive line in Seattle, this makes a lot of sense. He's more of a zone blocker, but I'm not exactly sure what the Seahawks are running on offense, but I feel like he fits at least what they were doing in previous seasons. And Dotson can help secure that middle of the pocket, an area where they have just really struggled to protect. So Seattle drafts one of LA's favorites, Kevin Dotson, at the guard position. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one was tough. I mean, corner, safety, those are the ones I spent the most time on. I think the Steelers don't really have a quarterback option that's clearly upgrading over Kenny Pickett with this pick. Offensive line, they could use a center, but there's not really a marquee name that I wanted to discuss or pick in this video. So I decided to go with I decided to go with secondary. And, looking at their current roster, they have more safeties that they rely on. They have more safeties on their roster right now that they like. Their corner position's really shaky. So I ended up going with somebody that could help contribute right now, but also help tutor Porter. And that is Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore was one of the best corners in football this past season, in my opinion. I'd rank him inside, a cornerback one territory. I think he was that good. He had some bad moments because of the amount of man coverage he plays, which transfers me to the conversation of the Steelers did play more man coverage last year. They did, and they played a lot more cover one last year. And that's something that Gilmore has always been great at, is man coverage, and specifically cover one. And Gilmore could help give a number 2 corner on the outside that can play man or play zone alongside Joey Porter Jr. And he could also help Porter grow his game. He's a really smart player. He's a tutor in ways. He helps others get better. We've heard it from J.C. Jackson and Trayvon Diggs, how much Stephon Gilmore helps these guys grow their game. So he could do the same for Porter, but he could also be a presence in that locker room for a team that is full of veterans on that side of the ball. They would really respect and love to have Stephon Gilmore on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Plus, having Gilmore on the Steelers just would be cool. Like a great defender, a Hall of Famer, going on the Steelers and playing for the Steelers would be pretty fun. The Cleveland Browns are next. The Browns need interior defensive line to complement Dalvin Tomlinson. A couple of the guys that they had, Shelby Harris and Maurice Hurst, are free agents. The edge position, Zadarius Smith is a free agent. Offensively, they're good. Like, they literally have, no free agents, so they're fine. Secondary, they're pretty good. Linebacker, though, they could definitely utilize. So I thought about this one. Do you go with D-line? Do you go with linebacker? Front 7 is in desperation. So I went with Chase Young. Chase Young reminds me in some ways of Zadarius Smith, a younger version. He's a little bit more of a stiff edge rusher, but he brings power, explosiveness. He brings a great athlete to the table. And he would be a perfect number 2 to, just like the Niners intended for him to be with Nick Bosa, and he was at times last year. He would be a perfect number 2 to what they already have in Myles Garrett. So go younger at this spot and upgrade from Zadarius Smith in terms of age and potential growth. And so that makes a lot of sense for me. The Browns want to put a lot of assets in their defensive front, and they do that with Chase Young. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have the 25th pick in the NFL free agency draft. And this is where I think the next receiver comes off the board. Chris Jones is gone, but I thought about defensive line. I said, even if they pick up a defensive lineman, he's not going to be as good as Chris Jones. What's the point? I don't see the point. Could they go with the tackle? Certainly they could go with the tackle, but Tyron Smith is gone, and that's the for sure guy, in my opinion. So let's go receiver. Let's get a guy that would be your best receiver on your team, your most talented receiver on your team. He'd bring you a little bit of flair, a little bit of speed, a little bit of vertical ability back to your offense that you're desperately missing, and that is Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown, he's not like an alpha target number 1 guy, but he wouldn't break the bank. He's got great speed. He can make defenses respect that speed. He can play in the slot or outside. And I think he would just be a massive upgrade for the potency of this offense in Kansas City. So, Marquise Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs. The San Francisco 49ers are next up right after the team they lost to in the Super Bowl. The Niners, edge rusher always comes to mind with this team, especially because Chase Young left in this draft. Offensively, offensive line was certainly a thought as well, but I think they're going to go to the draft and address that. So I figured, okay, where's an area that people aren't really thinking of in terms of the Niners, but is probably a good area to address? And I'm thinking, how can they shift their defense, change their defense? Brandon Staley's coming in. Brandon Staley loves different coverages, different looks, loves his cornerbacks for a reason. I think the Niners go with Xavier Howard here to play some more man coverage on the outside. You could have him and Charvarius Ward playing press man bump coverage on the outside, 2 of the best in the game in that area of their game. That would be very unique and very fun to watch, and I think that would allow the pass rush to get home in many instances. Having 2 big physical corners, that can still run well on the outside of that defense, covering receivers, would be a great look, in my opinion. So the Niners go with the veteran, throw up the X. Xavier Howard is a 49er as the number 2 to Charvarius Ward. The Dallas Cowboys, well, they need a new owner, but I couldn't find a new owner for them unless coach wants to step up. So I got left tackle, I got center, I got linebacker as the primary needs. Tyron Smith already left. Tyler Biadasz is a free agent. Are there any centers out there? So then I thought about defense. Could they go defensive line in the middle? Yeah, maybe a DJ Reader would be nice for them, but they also don't love to spend a lot of cap or money on that spot. So I'm like, maybe they wouldn't go there. Safety, I think they're okay. They're fine. Corner, I think they've got their top 2, so they're okay. Linebacker, though, is the area where they could biggest improvement overall by this pick, and that would be Patrick Queen of the Baltimore Ravens to the Dallas Cowboys. He would bring speed to their defense, physicality to their defense, IQ to the middle of their defense. He showed off his range last year. He showed off his ability to get into passing lanes. He's a good blitzer. He could bring a lot of different things to this defense in Dallas. So Cowboys upgrade their linebacker position instead of trying to replace a player that, is going to be tough to replace just through free agency alone. So Denver Broncos are next. The Broncos with the 28th pick in the 2024 NFL free agency draft. They could go with a quarterback, obviously. Russell Wilson is going to be gone. They could go with a cornerback to help Pat Surtain and become his number 2. They could go with a center because Lloyd Cushenberry is a free agent. So where do they go? They go with safety to help complement Justin Simmons, my guy. I go with Xavier McKinney. Now you have, this is just a fun addition for me. I don't think this is going to happen, but now you have 2 hybrid safeties that can play man, that can play zone, that can fly around, that can make big hits, that can intercept the football. 2 interchangeable safeties with great versatile skills is what I like to see in a defense, and McKinney can bring that in complement to what Justin Simmons already has in Vance Joseph's defense. Next up, we got the New Orleans Saints. And unfortunately, they still got Derek Carr. So quarterback is not an option. Defensive end, I think, is a sneaky option. They need a pass rusher. Tackle and guard are both spots where if they want to get the most out of Carr, they've got to protect him. So I thought about all those different areas. Apparently, they might trade Marshawn Lattimore. Saints fans, let me know what you think of that. I think pass rush is the area that's still available where they could benefit the most and get the most spark because their pass rush has been a little bit, lackluster the last couple of years. So the Saints, I'm going with Bryce Huff, a really, really good pure pass rushing type of guy. Great bend, great quickness, speed to power. He's able to just pop every time he's on the field. One of the most productive pass rushers in football last year, and he's not going to have to play every single snap. The Saints would rather have bigger guys on the field at times against the run on the edge, so be it. Bryce Huff can play in passing situations against passing personnel packages and absolutely feast for the Saints. Now that allows you to move Cameron Jordan around, Granderson around, whatever you want to do with that front and that sub package is fascinating from there on out. The Los Angeles Chargers are up next. Chargers need defensive line. They need to learn how to stop the run. So that's the first thing I thought of. But then I also looked at their depth chart and I said corner could be a need. Safety could be a need. With Gilman being a free agent and with, just them not being great at corner. So I ultimately went with the front because I think when I think of Harbaugh and I think of their team and their identity and what they want to do and what they want to be, I think they want to be able to run the ball. I think they want to be able to stop the run. And there's a big man on campus that's available. His name is DJ Reader. I discussed him already with the Bengals because I picked Christian Wilkins over him, but I really like this fit for the Chargers. I think they need a run stuffer. They need a man that can take over in the middle, and I think DJ Reader could be that guy for them and set the tone for Harbaugh's defense up front. The Miami Dolphins are next up. The Dolphins need offensive line, right? Wide receivers, they're fine. They'll find a more serviceable tight end. Running backs, they're electric. Defensively, they could use a corner. They could use defensive line. But offensive line is really the importance of this team because Mike McDaniel couldn't really get away with drop back pass in a way that he would have liked. The drop back passing game suffered because they couldn't protect Tua and Tua couldn't make the throws under pressure. And what's the best way to continue to upgrade your offense and get better It's by adding better offensive linemen. They go out and they add Jonah Jackson to the Detroit Lions. A great run stuffer, a good pass blocker, a former Pro Bowler, an all-around good guard who's still fairly young, about 26 years old. He gets signed to help secure the middle of the pocket, an area where Tua desperately needs protected because he's small. He throws over the top. He needs that middle of the field protected. That's where they do most of their damage. So Jackson comes in and gets signed by the Dolphins. And with the last pick in the 2024 NFL free agency draft, the Buffalo Bills are going to go defense because their defense chokes each and every time, like McDermott does in the playoffs. So they need to continue to improve that area. Micah Hyde is getting older. Micah Hyde is a free agent. So safety was the thought for me. Offense is fine. You know, they'd like a receiver. I think that's coming in the draft. I'm going with a safety. That's Geno Stone. Geno Stone, to me, of the guys that I thought of, played the most like Micah Hyde. He's a floater, deep, free safety type. That's a ball hawk. He drives the football well. He sees the game well. He's incredibly high IQ. And those are the type of zone defenders that McDermott loves. He'll fit into the system. He'll replace Micah Hyde. You could bring Hyde back if you like. But to me, Stone is the guy. Young, ascending football player for the Bills to try to make that Super Bowl run. That is your 2024 NFL free agency draft. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next free agency video. 100 likes for 25 gems to sign in NFL free agency and where I think they'll go. Peace, guys.